Now in this session we are going to see the construction and working of a Reddy shock tube and the characteristics of a Reddy shock tube in the module 1 oscillations and waves. Now we see the Reddy shock tube, working of a Reddy shock tube and construction of a Reddy shock tube. What exactly is a Reddy shock tube? Reddy shock tube is a hand operated shock producing device. Now we have seen the previous sessions of module 1 stating that the shock waves. What are the uses of shock waves? What is a shock wave and how? Now we will see in this session the production. How can we produce a shock wave? This Reddy is the name of a scientist. Reddy, name of the invention, Reddy shock tube. He is an Indian scientist who has given a Reddy shock producing device using a human intervention. Now we will see the construction and working of a Reddy shock tube. How a shock wave can be created using a mechanical energy in the labs. Reddy shock tube is a hand operated shock tube capable of producing shock waves by using human energy. That's what I said. It is just like a cycle pump, it will be there. Reddy shock tube is just like a cycle pump. It is having a piston and we will see how it exactly is a construction. It is a shock producing device. Reddy shock tube is a generation of shock wave using a tube, using human energy. So now we see the construction. Its long cylindrical tube with two sections are separated by the diaphragm. Its one end is fitted with a piston and other end is closed or open to the surroundings. See here, you can see here it is a Reddy shock tube. Here this is a Reddy shock tube. It is of 1 meter and here we have a piston here. Like a cycle pump, we have a piston here. The one which is connected, piston is connected. This is divided into two parts. The Reddy shock tube is divided into two parts. The part where the piston is attached, this part is called as a driver section, and the other part downstream, and this is called as a driven section. You can see here the total Reddy shock tube is almost 1 meter, which half of it is with the driver section. Driver section consists of a piston and the other end is called as a driven section. You can see here this is a downstream end and this is an upstream end. Here the driver section and the driven section are separated by a diaphragm. You can see this is a diaphragm which separates the two sections here. Driver section is filled with a driver gas which is at a higher pressure, and the driven section is filled with a test gas which is at a lower pressure when compared to the driver section. So here this is an upstream end and this is a downstream end. The pressure in the two sections can be determined. Here in this section you can see two sensors S1 and S2 are nothing but the pressure sensors which detects the pressure in the driven section. The gas filled in the driven section is nothing but the test gas, and the gas filled in the driver section is called as a driver gas. The gas in the driver section can be measured using a digital pressure gauge fitted here. Here you can see here this is a digital pressure gauge which detects the pressure in the driver section, and the piston is attached. So this is the construction of a Reddy shock tube. Reddy shock tube consists of a long cylindrical tube with two sections separated by a diaphragm. Its one end is fitted with a piston and the other end is closed or open to the surroundings. Here you can see this is the construction of a Reddy shock tube. See, the same thing what I have explained is it is here Reddy shock tube consists of a cylindrical tube of about 30 mm diameter and length of 1 meter. As I told you, 50 centimeters driver section and 50 centimeters driven section. It is divided into two driver and driven section and separated by 0.1 thickness of the diaphragm. The piston is fitted at the driver end and far end is closed. Digital pressure gauges and S1 and S2, these are all the things what I have explained in the previous section. See here. This is a digital pressure gauge connected to the driver section. Pressure sensors S1 and S2 are connected to the driven sections to detect the pressure in this driven section and detect the pressure. It is a digital pressure gauge and a piston. This is the construction of a Reddy shock tube. Now we see the working of a Reddy shock tube. The working is been given over here and I will explain with the help of a diagram itself. Here you can see here the piston is here when the gas is filled in the when the gas is filled in the driver section, which is at a high pressure, and the test gas is filled in the driven section, as I told you, the test gas will be at lower pressure, whereas driver gas is at a higher pressure. Now piston is being pushed. The moment the piston is being pushed, since the gas in the driver section is very high, what will happen? The moment the piston is pushed inside, the pressure undergoes this will having a very high pressure. Since it is been pushed, piston is being pushed inside, now the diaphragm ruptures and the pressure will be moved. The driver gas will be moved into the driven section. The diaphragm ruptures. The moment the diaphragm ruptures, a shock wave is being generated because of a very high compression of a gas in this. Because the pressure is very high in the driver gas, when the piston is pushed inside, it is compressed, due to which the diaphragm ruptures and the driver gas enters into the driven section. And the moment the diaphragm ruptures, there is a production of the shock waves. The generated shock waves travels down to the downstream end. The moment the diaphragm ruptures, a shock wave is produced. The moment the shock wave is produced, here S1 and S2, which is the pressure sensors in the driven section, there is a sudden increment in the pressure which can be detected using S1 and S2. So the primary shock wave which has been created travels down to the downstream end. The moment it hits here and starts reflecting, again there will be a sudden increase in the temperature and pressure of the gas, because the shock wave starts moving in the reflected back. This is how a shock wave is being generated. That is what has been mentioned here. The driver gas is compressed. The driver gas is compressed by pushing the piston into the driver until the diaphragm ruptures. The driver gas rushes into the driven section and pushes the driven gas filled towards the far end. This generates a moving shock waves that traverses length of the driven section, and there is a sudden increase in the temperature and the pressure of the gas. The primary shock wave are reflected from the downstream end. After the reflection, the test gas undergoes further compression, which boosts its temperature and pressure. So still there will be higher values of pressure due to reflection of the waves. So the generation of the shock waves, there is a sudden rise in pressure which are detected by S1 and S2, recorded by the digital CRO from the shock wave. This is how a shock wave is being generated. It is a shock producing device. What are the characteristics of a ready shock tube? Ready shock tube operates on the principle of free piston driven shock tube. Free piston driven shock tube. As I told you here, you can see here, the moment the piston is being pushed, the gas is compressed. Due to the compression, there is a rupture in the diaphragm and the primary shock wave is generated, which travels down. The moment the primary shock wave is generated, there will be a sudden increase in the pressure and temperature, which had been detected by the pressure sensors connected to CRO. You can see there is a sudden rise of pressure and temperature. There is a sudden rise in the pressure. The moment there is a sudden rise in the pressure, the shock wave is generated. The generated shock waves hits and goes towards the downstream, and again it starts reflect. The moment it starts reflected, again the temperature and pressure increases because of the reflection. This is how a shock wave is generated. Once the shock wave is generated, to generate one more shock wave, this diaphragm, the paper diaphragm, should be replaced. Again there should be a diaphragm. Replace the diaphragm. The moment the diaphragm ruptures, there will be a hole created. So this diaphragm has to be replaced by another paper to create one more shock wave. Again the test gas has to be given in the driver gas, which are lower pressure when compared to the driver section. Again the driver section is filled with driver gas with a high pressure, and in order to create once again the gas should be filled, diaphragm should be changed, again the piston should be moved inside to create one more shock wave. So this is a free piston hand operated shock producing device. See here, it is a hand operated shock producing device. It is a hand operated shock producing device. It is capable of producing Mach number exceeding 1.5. That means you can create Mach numbers of greater than 1.5. The rupture pressure is a function of thickness of the diaphragm. With what force you push the piston and the thickness of the diaphragm. More the pressure and thickness should be less, the shock wave is generated. Temperature exceeding 900 Kelvin can easily be obtained by the ready shock tube. These are the characteristics of a ready shock tube. Thank you.